You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGackie, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a fresh episode of the podcast. Today, I'm talking to Michael from Tonetuga Effects, and we get off in the weeds. Don't worry, we do eventually talk about guitar stuff, but we got to get through some conspiracy theories first. It's just the way things go sometimes. It was a great chat. Michael's a great conversationalist, and we recorded about 40 minutes of additional content over at Patreon. Yeah. So if you like these kind of conversations, if you enjoy these chats, over on Patreon for just $5 a month, you can help support the show and get additional content every week delivered to your ears. Kind of like this, right in your podcast player. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful technology. So yeah, you can check that out if that's a thing you like to do. It helps keep food on the table and keep the lights on and keep the content flowing. And that's what it's all about. So if you dig that, it's over at patreon.com/tonemob. You can check it out and see if it works for you. All right. Without further ado, let's get right into this episode. Boom. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Michael Virella of Tonetuga Effects. What's happening, man?
Hey, not too much, Blake. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate you, squeezing me into your schedule.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm glad we were able to do it. Sorry I had to bump you back a couple hours. I was on an unexpected phone call, but it was good.
You know, I was here at 11 a.m. and I was like, I haven't gotten the email from this guy yet. I wonder if, are we off for today? And then I realized that you are in Portland, right?
Yes.
So it's 3 hours behind you.
Ah, I gotcha. Sorry about that. I probably should have.
No, it's my fault.
Clarified that. But yeah, well, thanks for coming on the show and hanging out. This will be a good time. I know we've messaged back and forth quite a bit, and I think this is gonna go well. It's our mutual friend Devin Whitaker for hooking us up. That guy is amazing.
Yeah, I loved his podcast with you. It was fun. And I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and Devon is the first guy who's been on there who I personally know. And so I said, hey man, it seemed like a lot of fun. How do you get on? And he said, oh, you just ask. So, it never occurred to me to just say, hey, I like your stuff. If you have a free minute, hit me up.
I mean, that's really, it's as simple as that. I've tried to get, like a lot of different people on, and 99% of the time, if I get like a artist that I really like or something, it almost never goes through their management, which is funny because that's what their management is supposed to do. But it's almost always just me like messaging them and being like, hey, I do this thing. Do you want to do this thing? Or like, yes or no, or they don't respond. Well, usually it's not no. I've never gotten a no. It's either just like a no response. And I don't take that like offensively because they get like a million messages. They can't be, probably from a lot of crazy
exactly.
people. You can't.
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think you should take it personally because you'd be amazed who manages the Instagram accounts for some of these other companies. For example, it's a lot of wives. There's a lot of friends that you think you're talking to, and it's like, oh no, by the way, this is his wife. I do all the Instagram for him. Or the reverse. Or it's just like an intern. And sometimes if you message Keely, it'll be Robert just chilling, having a cup of coffee, and he's the one who actually answers messages sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Or, sometimes it might be me. Not a Keely.
Yeah.
But on some of these other companies' Instagrams, it might very well be me that you're talking to. It is possible. But that's a part of what I do in the day to day. I have a handful of guys that I help out with that stuff because
I'm going to start every new Instagram conversation with Blake ? And just see what happens.
They'll be like, "Who are you talking? What are you talking about?" This is Carl at Electro Foods. Why are you? Who's Blake? So, why don't we get into your story? I don't know anything about it other than you make cool pedals and you're a cool dude. But how did you get started in playing guitars and making pedals and doing all the everything?
Yeah, sure. I probably have a pretty similar start to a lot of guys. When I got into the pedal scene, this was back in early 2000s. I just knew that I wanted a blues breaker. That was what everybody had. And I didn't know what a blues breaker was. So I got the Boss BD2 and I was like, this is blue. It's obviously Blues Driver. It's basically the same thing.
It has to be.
And I had that. Yeah, exactly. I had that for years. And I remember when I went to high school, it died. And I think I was like a sophomore or junior in high school and it died. And as a summer job, I was working in a machine shop. And, the company I work for now makes industrial controls. And, I asked the guys in the shop, I said, hey, can you guys, open this up and show me what to do? Can you save it? I don't want to spend another, $60 to get another one. They opened it up and there was nothing inside. It's just a handful of components. And I was just amazed that, it wasn't as magical as I thought it was. You imagine you're going to open it up and it's just going to explode with pieces. And there's a bunch of huge science going into it. And, they showed me how to fix it and I got it going. And from there, it was kind of like, I got addicted to it. I had to buy non-functioning pedals off eBay or Craigslist. People will advertise them as, hey, this doesn't work anymore. Or this is dead. So it's $5 or $10. And I would buy them and see if I could figure out how to fix them, replace a pot, replace a switch. And I would turn them around and sell them back on eBay or on Craigslist. And that was how I paid for my textbooks during college.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
And it was pretty solid turnarounds. It's not buku money, but it was enough. It was definitely supplementing my job. So, I did that for a long time and, the internet was already huge by then. And nowadays you can learn anything on the internet. And so I use it as a resource to figure out, hey, what does a tube screamer schematic look like? What are they doing with this? Oh, how is that different from, my old blues breaker? What's going on different in there? And, open them up, see what you could change and see how you can make them different and unique. And, I made a few designs, made some small custom stuff just for myself. And it wasn't until, Reverb started in 2013, 2014?
Somewhere in that ballpark, yeah. Like they started right around the same time I did, I feel like. Maybe just a little bit before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, so when that opened up, that was a game changer for me because now I had access to stuff I'd never heard about before. It used to be you'd go to a show and you look at somebody's pedal board and you say, oh, I know what all those pedals are. They're all Boss pedals or they're all Electro-Harmonix pedals. And you get really interested in, okay, let's see what did they do differently than the other people? And you kind of, learn tips and tricks from other builders without them really teaching you. You're just kind of seeing what they were thinking about when they were doing it. And obviously what they tried and what worked, ended up being kind of like a staple in their version of whatever circuit they ended up doing. So I made a handful of fuzzes and a handful of, drives and distortions and put them all on Reverb. And the ones that sold the quickest, I made 5 more of each of those. And I said, okay, are these the ones that are going to be popular? And I put them on there. And when they all sold, I cut out the ones that didn't sell as well. And I said, okay, now let me make 10 of these. And let's see if these still maintain some some level of interest in the market. And this is probably over the course of 2 or 3 years. And after these couple designs that I had made had gotten popular enough to, have people actually requesting them from me, I said, okay, it's time let's take the leap and let's try to make this a real brand. And in 2018, I started, stockpiling inventory and, taking all the money that I had saved up from selling pedals and decided to, give it a real shot. So 2019 was really the first full-blown year, and it worked out fantastically. We launched 4 different models, got 3 new ones that are going to hopefully come out this year, maybe spread those across the next 2 years. So it's looking pretty good.
Do you remember what those first ones that you were, like which ones in the beginning when you were on Reverb did not sell and which ones did?
My first main experiments, because this was a pretty easy one to design around. There's so much documentation on this pedal. I made like 14 different versions of the Big Muff. Mm-hmm. And, different artwork on each one. Hey, let me make one that sounds kind of like this. Or let me make one that sounds, kind of Jack White-ish. Or let me make one that sounds David Gilmour-ish. And every single time I made one and I advertised it as being a David Gilmour sound, it would just sell instantly online. And I tried to make the artwork interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with the one we make, the Prism. Mm-hmm. But it was one of those first models that I made that it sold really well. But the other ones, some I tried to make sound like absolute garbage, because there was a time, and I'm sure you remember this, when the popular fuzzes were the ones that sounded like putting a fistful of glass in the garbage disposal.
I still like
the
that
disgusting
too, so.
fuzz. I know it is. It's still very popular. And so I went through a phase where I said, okay, I'm going to try to make just these disgusting fuzzes. But they never really performed as well as I'd hoped they would. So the ones I stuck to were the ones that just, they have a natural calling. Everyone loves the Pink Floyd tone.
It's true. Everyone loves Gilmour. Very, very few people. I have ran into a couple people that weren't fans of his sound, but it's very rare. I think he has a pretty.
I want to meet
universal
those
appeal.
people.
I don't want to meet those people. Those barely human. I don't know. No, they're fine. It's all subjective at the end of the day. So
it is. It's so different across the board. If you listen to some of the new bands that I'm into, are like Royal Blood. Mm-hmm. The lead guitarist or bassist of that band uses ridiculous amounts of just distortion and fuzz and octaves to make it sound like a guitar. For the longest time, I didn't even know that he was playing a bass.
Right.
And if you make it work for you, there's somebody out there who will go for that sounds, guaranteed.
Has he been more public about his pedal and gear selection? Because I when I first heard of that band and first kind of took some interest in them, he was very guarded with his tonal secrets. Do you know, have we figured it out yet? Has he opened up? Is there a rig rundown? What's going on over there? Do you know?
I don't know him, but I'd love to. If you do, give me his number. But I think I saw on Reddit, if you're on the guitar pedal subreddit, these guys are fanatics about any artist. It doesn't matter who it is. And somebody went to a show and somebody somehow got on stage and snapped a couple pics of a board. And then I believe, and my timeline might be wrong here, but I believe that turned into the Andertons TV sounds like kind of episode. And I believe that they used a lot. I think that happened after I saw this post. And they used a lot of the same pedals that he had on his board to make that sound. So I don't want to credit Reddit with everything, but those guys, if they want something bad enough, they're going to get it.
It's true. They're monsters over there. They're crazy. I don't spend a lot of time on Reddit because they're a little too crazy for me, but sometimes
you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. I go incognito all the time over there. Just it's a really weird environment, but I get it. If you are advertising anything, they'll crucify you. But if you're sharing something cool that you made, they'll carry you around on a pedestal. They'll love you forever. Like they love the guys from Old Blood Noise there. They love a few brands on there. But there's been a few times that a few demoers have gone on there and they've said, hey, check out my channel, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, get out of here. We never want to see you in here again. And they'll get banned.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. It's like you've made it like it's okay to share certain things, but it's like here's some free content. And they're like, no. I don't want free content.
It's too corporate for me.
I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand that really. I understand that because it's happened in the Tone Mob Facebook group a handful of times, not really so much anymore, where it's like, okay, buddy, we get it. We know you have a YouTube channel. But usually all it takes is just a message and be like, hey, man, chill. We got it. We know.
Yeah, bring it down a notch. We're all trying to have fun here.
Yeah, it's not, this is a show around this is a group around the podcast. It's not a group around your YouTube channel. You know what I mean? So
do you still get a lot of engagement on Facebook?
Oh yeah, a ton. Not so on
odd to me.
Not on the page. Not on.
Okay.
Not on, I get almost nowhere with the page. I just post things there so that if people stumble across, they don't see a post from 3 years ago. They know that it's still an active entity, because that always does look weird. You'll stumble across a page for a business or a media outlet or whatever, and because Facebook is Facebook, they'll forget about it and oh, they haven't posted in 3 months. Are they still around? And I don't want that vibe. So I do post there about once a week, just with episode announcements and things. But I'm very active in the Tone Mob Facebook group. And that group is very, very active with a lot of people. So,
see, it's very regional for me. I get almost no American engagement on Facebook. It's pretty much exclusively South American and Africa are the people that talk to me on. Yeah, it's very odd. Maybe I'm trying to remember specifically what country it is, but I've sold a handful of pedals to one country in Africa, and I can't remember which one it is. And apparently they've got a pretty good metal scene there. And so that's kind of how I think it's Argentina in South America is the big one for me. Mm-hmm. And I'll have to let you know which one it is in Africa, but almost no American engagement. It's the weirdest thing, versus Instagram is pretty much exclusively American.
My Instagram is all over the place. It's weird. It's mostly America. I think the biggest city is LA, but that's just because it's a huge city, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of cheating. They're throwing the curve.
Yeah, they're messing it up a little bit. But there's definitely I definitely have a lot of South American people who follow me on Instagram too. But the US primarily is the biggest. I know for the podcast it's about 70% a little more than 70% US based. And then followed by
it's a huge market, so the UK is big also in Japan. I would say those are probably my top three.
I have almost no listeners in Japan, but there are a few. But I have to imagine that's because I don't
slight
speak
language
Japanese.
barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm honestly very surprised at how many once you get out of the US and once you basically get out of US, UK, Canada, and Australia, those are my biggest, which makes sense. That's all primarily English speaking countries. So for a podcast, that kind of makes sense. But there are definitely a lot of European listeners, probably because they are smart and can speak more than one language, unlike myself.
Yeah. I'm horribly ignorant about anything other than English.
I can barely speak English sometimes. But no, I would suggest if you want to just have, if you want to make your Facebook experience a little more enjoyable, getting involved in some of the gear groups on Facebook. Like my Facebook feed is so much better than most people's. I almost never engage. Or if I see a politician, I'm scrolling by. I'm not going to look at that. Do not show me that. Because you know how it works. It's totally based on what you engage with. So I very intentionally engage with things that I want it to show me more of, and then it shows me more of those things. So that's kind of nice. I think also, a lot of people's Facebook feeds get clogged with things that make them mad because they spend time looking at things that make them mad.
They spend time getting angry about things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's got to be a metric for the amount of time you spent looking at an ad but didn't engage with it.
It does.
Just
It
because
100% does. And the same
there
thing
has
for
to
a
be.
post. For a post too. Like,
and I'm just waiting for, you know, one day I'm going to be in an FBI meeting and they're going to slam the folder down in front of me and say, you spent 20 minutes looking at these ads in total across this amount of time. And I'm like, I don't what does this mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
You enemy of state.
This is kind of a funny topic to bring up, but it was something I talked about with Brian Wampler on Chasing Tone here, which is another podcast. There's so many hours of me flapping my gums on the internet. It's almost frightening. They're going to do like voice recognition software and do a deep fake one of these days. Like, you said all these horribly racist things. Like, no, I didn't. I didn't say that. What? I don't.
It's coming, man. It's coming.
Man. But like, we were talking about, we didn't know, like with Google and Facebook and all of these things. Well, primarily Google and Facebook, but there's others too. They know everything about us. Like there's nothing that they don't know at this point, which is kind of creepy. But we didn't know that going into it. You know, they write these terms of service that part of the terms of service is that they can change the terms of service whenever they want to. And so even
unilaterally.
Yeah, even though you agreed to one thing, you technically agreed to let them do whatever they want. And we didn't know that when we signed up for it. But now that information's out there. So I feel like it's an important thing to like tell our kids when they start becoming of age and engaging with the internet. Like, listen, this is what they're doing. Like, it's too late for you and I. The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm just I don't know. I feel like it's a weird thing to talk about on a guitar podcast, but it's been on my mind a lot.
It's really not, because I see memes on Instagram all the time with, hey, anytime I talk about anything, you know, I know Google's around the corner listening to me and they're going to give me ads for that thing. So that's already been proven, you know?
Definitely.
The only thing that I'm concerned about is they're collecting info on when I use, you know, like my bank or something. You know, they can have my YouTube history. I don't really even care. They can have my Reddit history. I don't care about that either. But when they start collecting the personal info, you know, things that directly impact with, you know, my ability to feed my family, that's the stuff that freaks me out. And I don't want to get all conspiracy theory, but I do love a good conspiracy theory.
I do too.
But you know, I don't know if you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, but every time he gets on one of these rants, I'm always thinking, man, this guy's this giant chimpanzee's got it figured out.
Right. I do get a kick out of some of those episodes. I don't listen to it all the time, but once in a while I got to throw on and hear him get crazy.
You know, you can't buy into it all the time, but just you have to exercise a little bit of caution, I guess. I mean, they just know the amount of hours I've spent looking at guitars that I'm never going to buy on Sweetwater. You know,
they definitely
enjoy that data.
You must really like Les Pauls. You spent a lot of time looking at Les Pauls. Yes, I have.
You caught me. You caught me.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I'm not really that concerned about it, but I think it's something to be. I'm not concerned about it for me, but I think it is something to be aware of. And that's not really a conspiracy theory. That's just a fact. That's just what's going on.
That's true. And I can tell you one more weird thing.
Tell me something weird.
You know,
I like weird.
I have. It's weird to not share your life on the internet. So I've got a 2.5-year-old, and when you know, my wife gave birth, everyone at my office where I work was like, "What's up with this secret baby? I haven't seen any pictures of your baby on Facebook." And it's like, well, you know, maybe I don't want to do that. Is that really so weird that I don't want to share all that, you know, every detail of my life I have to broadcast into the internet ether?
I don't think that's weird at all.
It's not. But everybody who I work with thought that it was the oddest thing, and I was, you know, keeping the monkey tail baby hidden from the world because I didn't want to share it on the internet.
I don't post my kids. I don't post my kid's face, and that's not because I'm like some famous person.
You're
like
a little Michael Jackson-y.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? You know, I don't do it. I don't do it for that reason. It's like, I know some people, some bigger artists who don't post their kid's face because they don't want their kid to be harassed, because it does happen. but that's not the reason I do it. The reason I do it is like when they're old enough to start using the internet in the way that we do, it goes back to that. I want them to know. Like, I want them to know that if you're going to post a selfie with this one special filter that everyone's using, they didn't just make that filter that how old, the aging filter thing that went around a while ago. They didn't just do that for fun.
Oh, man. I do remember that.
They did that to collect your facial recognition data.
We're trying to estimate what you're going to look like in future pictures.
And yeah, I did it. It was fun. Like I
did too. Now it's out there.
But like they did, I just want them to know, like they're doing that to collect that information so they can literally see you wherever you go at some point. Why else would they want that information? I don't think that's conspiracy theory. I think it was free. And when something is free, you are the product. That's tends to be how I think of it anyway.
I would say that's generally true. But, they didn't have, hey, what are you going to look like in 5 years? What are you going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years? They just said, what are you going to look like at 60 or 70?
Yes.
If they were collecting, let's see what you're going to look like across all these age spectrums, then clearly they're collecting that for something.
Well, I think they just wanted to know what you looked like now. They were just trying to get people to send them their faces.
Okay, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that at all, but, it's tied to your phone, which is tied to your name, which is, oh yeah, we're done for.
We're done for. There is no privacy. If you think you have privacy, that's what I've seen people like not post certain things. I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, it was about Alexa. I posted something about Alexa, and I know what it was. I was like, oh yeah, you can get the podcast on Alexa now, and because I didn't even know you could do that until recently. Somehow they found it, and someone's like, I'm not going to put one of those devices in my house to have it listen to me all the time. And I commented as he typed into his iPhone on Facebook. So
yes, you don't have to worry about Alexa if you're carrying around your smartphone all day long.
I mean, to be fair, I feel the same. I'm like, I just don't want one extra listening device. I know this phone that's sitting right by me is hearing everything as we speak, but I don't need an additional one. That's, I guess, my theory. It's probably dumb. It's actually
kind of unavoidable too.
It is.
If you try to buy anything electronic nowadays, it doesn't have a microphone or a modem in it or anything like that that's going to communicate or collect information. It's just not possible.
No. Where are we going with this?
I don't know.
I don't know.
We're going to keep it conspiracy theories.
When are we going to get... Wait, are you trying to tell me that your guitar pedals have microphones in them and you're sending everything to Zuckerberg?
You found me out.
For crying out loud.
Zuck wants the info.
Get Big Zucks. He wants to know. He wants to know what you're doing. I don't think all of this is necessarily a bad thing, I should say, at the end of the day. I don't think it's a nefarious plan to undermine anyone. I think it's literally just like, I mean, in a lot of ways, our lives have gotten easier and more, accessible and just more connected because of all of it. And I don't really think that it's in Amazon or Facebook or Google's interest to start doing nefarious things, because people will start rejecting it. If it came out that there was something really, really bad going on, like at a dangerous level to the American public, people would stop using it. I think they would.
I think that almost happened with Facebook. After they said, oh yeah, we're definitely collecting your info. When you delete all your stuff, we still have it. And, if you don't want to use us, good luck. Every account that you have is somehow tied to Facebook or some other company we own. And the American people were like, well, we're going to, I guess, just keep using Facebook then. The pitchforks came down very slowly.
Yeah, I think that was silly in my personal experience or opinion, because I already knew that, like, by that time. You know what I mean? The information was available at that point. Like, if you're getting ads and it's an ad for a guitar that you just looked at, I mean, duh. You know what I mean?
Obviously.
So I was just surprised that people hadn't caught on to that yet. So I think people were mad because they didn't know. The general public didn't know. I don't know why they didn't know, but they didn't. So I don't know.
It probably has less to do, to be honest, it has less to do with collecting Michael Virella's info, because that's no good to anyone. Unless I go to run for president and you say, hey, you Google this very specific and odd thing, and I'm like, oh, there's an explanation for that, then maybe the big folder comes out. But realistically, it's just so they can market you more easily. That the whole reason Instagram has business accounts, which I don't know if you have a business account or a personal account.
I have a media account, or content creator, which is basically the same as a business account as far as what it shows you.
So if there's two ways you can go on Instagram, there's the personal way or the business way. They have to figure out, okay, which of these posts can I put an ad next to and have the higher percentage of viewership on that ad? Mm-hmm. And they say, well, obviously the people that are business accounts are trying to sell something. So they are more likely to pay. And therefore they are more likely to have advertisements in them already. So I'm going to put ads next to them. It makes it less intrusive to have two ads in a row than to have just one ad, Mm-hmm. So on the other hand, if you have a personal account, you can still do some kind of promotion with Instagram. And then as soon as you do that, I think you get put into the same bucket with the business accounts. They say, hey, this account is willing to pay. So now they go into the account with the business account. So on one hand, I think if you want your posts and whatever to get seen more, being a personal account is a better way to go. But as soon as you kick that door open and say, hey, I'm willing to pay to get more viewership on my stuff, that's when you start to have the trouble that a lot of people are having, where if you go back, 5 months ago, you could post anything on Instagram and it was getting hundreds and thousands of likes and views. And now today it's a fraction of that. And it's because they're doing something weird with the algorithm to make it so that you are at a disadvantage and you should be more likely to pay for ads to get your content seen, type of thing.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I've been in several different schools of thought with what they're doing and how they're doing it, because Instagram is a big part of what I do. Like I said earlier, I run a couple different accounts, and then obviously I have my own, which is what spawned this podcast. So it's pretty important to me to try to stay on top of it. And to me, it seems to go in waves. Like there will be a time when all the accounts I'm running, they're just going awesome. Everything's going great on them. Every metric is up and doing fantastic. And as soon as I start thinking that, something changes on the back end. and it all goes to like just terrible. And
just abysmal.
Yeah. But I have noticed that like they have to keep certain level of organic. I don't think they're ever going to be able to do with Instagram, because of how it's laid out and what they do with it. I don't think they're ever going to be able to go full Facebook. When they first went away from the, what is it called? The chronological feed, when they first ditched that, people really didn't like it. And they still don't really like it. They didn't like it so much that their engagement started dropping off and they started losing people. So they had to go back to a semi-chronological feed. So now, newer posts are favored in your feed. They had to go.
And you know
back.
what I've noticed? I've noticed that if you, and now we're telling this Instagram right now, they're going to be like, "Oh, we got to change this right now," because this one guitar podcast said they figured it out, they cracked the code. You can scroll past like the first 10 or 12 posts, and then it goes to ones that have, that were from 2 minutes ago or 3 minutes ago. But you have to go past all the ones that are from April and from September. And then it goes into more chronological.
Get anything that old. I think like the most I'll see is like a 3-day-old post.
See, I've seen some really old ones. It's the weirdest thing, because someone will like a post of mine that's from last year. And I'm wondering, are they scrolling through my whole feed, or did they just get prompted with this in the mismatch of old and new posts?
It also could have something to do with the hashtags you're using. Somebody's like just searches one of the hashtags you used and scrolling through. And yeah, because like in my actual feed, I don't get anything terribly old. It's all fairly recent posts for me. But that could be because I'm on it all the time. That could have something to do with it.
You want to know the weird thing that happened to me when I came out with the delay pedal, the Delphine? Mm-hmm. I did not know, because I don't actively seek out this info on the internet. I was told by 1,000 people that apparently Delphine is some Twitch or cam girl who became famous for selling bottles of her own bathwater. And I was like, well, crap. Well, crap.
Oh, no.
I just dedicated all of this marketing time and all this development time to this particular name. And when you search Delphine Delay, you get, my delay pedal. But if you just search Delphine, there's a very high chance you're going to get this chick and her bathwater for sale.
Oh, wow. Man, that is, I'm sorry you have to deal with that. That is information that I wish I didn't know. I wish I didn't know that people were doing that.
You are welcome, sir. But it was
man.
actually Devon did a demo of the delay for me, and the first comment was like, "Oh, does it come with bathwater?" And I was like, "What's this guy talking about?" And I started Googling, and I was like, "Oh, crap!
Like,
now what do I do?"
Like now,
recall everything. It's all over.
I mean, I'd be tempted, but I understand why you wouldn't. That is rough. It's a good name. I was like, oh, that's a cool name. Oh man.
Yeah, it's Delphine is from the Latin word for dolphin.
Oh, okay.
And the artwork on the pedal is pretty neat. I had it done by a local street artist in Charlotte, and she made it look kind of like a pod of dolphins in a wave.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was probably one of the coolest things that I've had a chance to do is work with, this person who's famous for, or not really famous, they're known around Charlotte for their, I don't want to say tagging. Tagging is not the right word for what this girl does. It's art, but nobody's bothered by it. It's not like someone spray painting this out of a boxcar. She does murals and people just leave them there because they're so good,
That's cool.
And it was hard to contact her because, she's got her, her face is all covered and everything because she's technically not doing something that's allowed,
right?
And so they actually painted a huge mural next to the office that I work at. And I just went over there one day and I was like, "Are you the person that does this stuff? Don't run away. I swear. I'm interested. Will you do something for me?"
Can you say like what they go by?
Yeah, I can. It's owl.charlotte. It's owl.clt, I think. And she does some incredible stuff. And I'm glad she's finally getting, more recognized. She's had some legit art gallery installments, I guess you'd call them. But she's part of there's a small artist group that just does street art in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And they get commissioned to do, like electrical boxes and stuff. I'm sure you have all this kind of stuff in Portland. But they get really cool locations that they can do these giant pieces at.
That's cool. I don't, I'm sure we have it here, but I don't see as much of that kind of stuff as you would think, if that makes any sense. You would think Portland's like super.
I would think it's super huge.
Yeah, and maybe someone's gonna write in and be like, "You're an idiot." Like, open your eyes, and that could be because I don't go around looking for it. So there's a chance that I'm just not seeing some very obvious things. But I'm pretty removed from that scene. But I do think it's pretty cool. So for whatever,
I don't know how you can be removed from that scene in Portland because Portland is the only place that whenever there's a picture posted on the internet and it's of like a guy dressed in full steampunk garb pulling his kids behind him in a wagon, it's like, oh, that's obviously Portland,
Well, of course it is. That's what somebody. So I can't remember who it was. My first name. They were like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "Portland," and they're like, "You're from Portland?" Like,
you're too normal. What's going on?
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. You're like, "Well, you're just a dude." I'm like, most of the people in Portland are just dudes and dudettes, and like the weird stuff is common, but like 90% of the population is just regular people.
Unique things get more popular on the internet than I'm not going to say ununique because you're not ununique, Blake. You're very special to me.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much.
But, you only see weird stuff on, and I don't want to say weird because steampunk stuff is pretty cool, but, it's different from the majority stuff that gets posted on the internet.
This is true. This is very true. Well, let's kind of segue back into guitars maybe for a minute. Before this podcast.
Sorry. I told you I would derail this thing like you've never seen.
Oh, no, actually, this is pretty normal. This is okay. This is about right. You've listened to this show. You understand. We just had a really super duper on topic one here. Actually, would have been a few weeks as people listen to this with Jason Rogers from JMR Guitars. And he educated us on multi-scale and what that actually is. That was like the most on topic one I've had since probably since Richard Hoover from Santa Cruz came on. So that was which has been a while. So
yeah,
I think people know what they're getting into here. But guitar stuff. Tell me about your like musical stuff. Like, you talked about how you got into making pedals, but what about music in general?
Oh man, whenever I listen to your podcast or really anyone else's, one of the questions everybody always gets asked is, how did you get interested in music, or when did you start playing guitar? And I actually started thinking about it when you had Alec on here from Mask Audio, and I was like, oh man, I got to start thinking about when it actually happened. And I think I pinpointed exactly when I got interested in music. When I was, it was 1999, because I had to Google what year it came out. The Matrix came out.
Yes.
And I was in 5th grade. And so obviously I didn't get to see it in the theaters. And one of my friends was having a birthday party, and, they did the whole, we're going to watch a movie. And the movie that we were going to watch was The Matrix on VHS. And I was like, yes, this is all I've ever wanted. And so we watch it. And if you watch it the whole way through, the end credits, and keep in mind, I'm like 9 or 10 at the time. The end credits is Wake Up by Rage Against the Machine. And brain, my mind exploded. And I never heard anything like that before in my entire life. And I vividly remember that Christmas, the only thing I wanted for Christmas was that soundtrack, the Matrix soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And the first, on that soundtrack, there's Rock is Dead by Marilyn Manson. There's Du Hast by Rammstein. And it just opens my, middle school eyes to, wow, there's some really incredible stuff that I've never heard of that's not mainstream pop, that I've only heard on the radio. And I think that was the time that I really started to get interested in music. And, it started off with, it was 2000. So I was into like Disturbed, and I was into Korn, kind of your preteen angsty stuff. That's what I was into.
Iowa
from Slipknot or nothing,
You're just like flooding me with nostalgia right now.
And I picked up a guitar for the first time when I was like 15. And I remember I still have it actually. Is a BC Rich Warlock, and I bought it for $89 off one of my friends on the team I was on. And it sounds like garbage. I love it because it looks really cool, but it is not a quality instrument at all. I got more enjoyment out of repainting it than I ever did out of playing it. So that was really where I'll send you a picture. It's I did one of the hydro dip, the swirly, like the gem paint.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually the same way that I print my pedals. And I did it that way. Well, that was kind of how I experimented with it. Was I said, okay, hey, let me see how I can float this paint on the surface of the water, because you can't just put paint on the surface of the water. It needs to there needs to be a higher surface tension of the water for the paint to float correctly.
Okay.
So you can kind of get into, I have to add, the internet says you add boric acid because it's kind of like a laundry detergent additive, and it makes the surface tension higher. So you can float, if you try to float nail polish, which is what I tried to do on just regular water, it sinks to the bottom. So, you raise the surface tension, and then you try to dip something in it, and it still doesn't stick, and you're wondering why. Well, the temperature of the water has to be very particular also. I find between 80 and 85 degrees is the best temperature to get the ink to adhere to the enclosures or to guitars. And so that's kind of where I got my learning curve for how I'm actually, printing my enclosures now. Because I don't know if you got one of the Clockwork multi-drivers.
Yes.
And you can see it's printed over the edge of the enclosure, which is pretty cool. It's not easy to do, and it's not always perfect. At least, the ones that I'm doing now are getting much, 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 much closer to, replicable every single time. But, the early ones were all kinds of jacked up because you have to go at a certain speed. And like I said, you can't print when it's right now it's like 40 degrees in Charlotte. So I can't work all year round unless I find a way to heat the water. And so I bought a bunch of aquarium water heaters to make the water a certain temperature. I've got the weirdest setup to do it.
But I had no idea that's how you were doing it. But I wondered because most people who use like a UV printer, which is kind of industry standard, they a lot depending on the printer, you can never get it to go over the edge like that. So I was like, how did he do that? Like, that's interesting. Like, obviously it wasn't a screen print. That wouldn't be easy to do either. So
I've tried that too. And I had a local screen printer who was motivated enough to try to see if he could print over the edge and then maybe rotate it 90 and print it again. It just wouldn't line up. It took a long time before I figured out how to do it. And if you see, if you Google hydrographics, and you see how they print motorcycle parts, motorcycle helmets and things like that, it's like a film, and you can buy the film, and you can, I'm giving away all my secrets, but if somebody really wants to figure out how to do it, please do. If you figure out a better way to do it, hit me up and I'll pay you to teach me how to do it better.
There you go.
But you float it on the surface and the film kind of dissolves, but it really doesn't. It's kind of like a milky. And then if you go at a very slow speed, it won't distort the image over the corners.
So I just realized that we've been talking about this quite a bit, and I know what you're talking about, but a lot of people may not actually know anything about what you're talking about. So maybe we should back up a little bit and explain exactly what a hydrographic is and what you're physically doing, because we kind of glossed over all that. Right.
So you have a small container of water. My container is like 2 feet wide by maybe 1.5 feet deep. And it's got a frame around it because water is really heavy and it pushes the sides out. And then I have a little frame that I mount. Let's see, I have 11 by 17 is one size you can buy. Pretty much any standard size paper, you can either trim it to size or you can buy it in pre-printed sheets, which I've started doing from a hydrographics place. And you float this on the surface of water. And the paper is made out of something that dissolves in water. But the ink stays behind. So if you stick your fist in it, it'll print onto your hands. And so in that way, it'll wrap around whatever you dip into it. So I definitely recommend Googling it. It's probably going to do a better way of describing exactly what happens. The best thing I can think is if you start Googling for how they print the Ibanez gems, you'll get pretty close and get the idea for what I'm doing. The difficult part is the corners, because the corners, when you dip them in water, they create kind of like a low pressure zone and they kind of make a little whirlpool. So you have to go at a certain speed so that it doesn't distort the image on the corners.
It looks like, I don't know if my hands would be steady enough. I feel like I would just blah, and it would just look like trash, but I don't know. I've never actually tried it.
Yeah, I have made a little jig to make it a little easier on me. And the jig has a little bit of weight to it. So it's getting dipped at more steadily than I could do with my hands and more accurately than I could do with my hands. But still, it's so dependent on temperature and so dependent on, the quality of the paper that you get. Some places that you buy it from, it's just not the same. Again, it takes way, way, way more time than putting it in a UV printer and just cranking out hundreds. So I'm probably not going to be able to do it forever. There's no way that I could do it in much larger mass than I'm currently doing it. But I would like to keep them around as maybe special or maybe like a premium version, just because it is unique. I don't really see anybody else doing anything like that.
No, I haven't either. I've not seen anybody doing or heard of anybody doing that. Really, honestly, that's a first. So that's cool.
Probably because it's impractical. That's why.
There's a good chance. There's a good chance of that. Yeah, they switched to the UV being the standard quite a while ago. I mean, because it's very high quality and it's, like you said, much easier, or not easier is probably not the right word, but much more efficient. That's probably the word.
Yeah, there are limits to what you can do. I have a printer that will print with white ink. And I thought that would be really cool because I could do a black enclosure with white graphics. But the white has some level of transparency to it.
Oh,
so it's not like when you put it on top of black, it disappears into the black. And so a lot of people ask for these, specific color palettes, and I say I can't do it with my current way of printing that. So there are some color combinations that are not doable, which is part of the reason why I like the white on black or the black on white. For one, it's very striking and it makes the images really pop. But also, I don't really see a whole lot of plain white pedals out there. There's really not a bunch that do that.
Not a ton, really. I mean, I'm trying to think of who comes to mind that has regularly done it, and only one other than yourself that immediately pops in my head is Big Ear, but they do other colors too. So
they
that's
do.
Not even fully accurate. They definitely do white. I think they started with white. That maybe is why I'm thinking that. But I can't think of anybody else that has made white their permanent thing. So maybe that's your thing. Everyone needs
I'm going to stick with it because, like I said, I like it.
Right on, man. Well, let's see. What else do we want to get into here? We've talked about, your musical preferences, but we haven't really talked about your guitar preferences. We had to spend 30 minutes talking about conspiracy theories first.
I'm a single coil type of guy. Let's see, last year for NAMM, MJT was kind enough to make us a guitar for our display. And maybe I'm a little old fashioned, but I like a Strat. And I did find that a lot of people at NAMM preferred a Telecaster, maybe because it's Nashville but I like a single coil. I like that it makes a little extra noise. It feels a little more real. If you are used to playing with singles and you start playing with humbuckers and you go to record, you suddenly realize, wow, I didn't realize how much noise there was in the backgrounds that is now gone. But then again, I don't play a lot of higher gain stuff. I play a lot of blues, rock, tile type of things. And, I do a little bit of ambient type of stuff, but, I don't play any really high gain stuff. So I never really gravitated towards humbuckers, which I kind of get. It kind of has that impression with it. If you get an Ibanez, and they're kind of going away from that now with the fusion guys that are out there. But, there's this impression that if you get something with humbuckers, it's going to be really, really high gain and you're not going to get the cleans that you can, out of a single coil. But I don't really think it matters nowadays. There's definitely a difference between single coils and P90s and humbuckers, but they're made so well now that in my number one Telecaster, I have one of the new Friedman humbuckers. It's the classic plus or whatever. And man, it sounds fantastic. I love it. So I'm starting to kind of convert. I do a little bit of everything. It's a little bit different for me and probably a lot of other builders because I want to hear what my stuff sounds like through single coils. I want to hear what they sound like through P90s. I want to see what they sound like through a coil splitted humbucker, just so I know if there's not one combination where it just doesn't work. And it's the same for amps as well. I do like tube amps. I'm not really a fan of the modeling amps. And it's not that it doesn't sound good. It just sounds different. So when I was at NAMM last year, I used a combination of a Presonus preamp and the Nunaber Iconoclast. And it sounded really good. And it was, totally battery powered. It was fantastic because I didn't have to worry about plugging into any of the jacks that were on the floor. And I could kind of move it around and shuffle it around. Didn't have to worry about it. But it just doesn't sound the same. There's some pedals that work really well with it. Like fuzz, you're not really going to tell the difference because it's garbling the signal enough that any difference in compression or any difference in fidelity is minimal. But when you get something like, I have a low gain drive. It's called the Songbird. it sounds very different through a Class D amp than it does through a tube amp. And it's because there's extra stuff going on, and that's there's no way around it. And like I said, it doesn't sound bad; it just sounds different.
For me, a lot of it is the feel too. Like I've played with almost all of the modeling, like the modern, like nice ones, except for Axe Effects. I haven't played with that one yet, and not for like extended lengths of time. Like just a little bit here and there. And for me, like I think I've said this on the podcast a lot. Like if I recorded with it and then I recorded with the real deal that it was mimicking, and then just listen to the two side by side, I wouldn't know. I don't think I could tell the difference in that.
I agree with that.
But it's the feel thing. So I just recorded, and I put this in Patreon last week. Last week as I record this anyway. I made a song, an intro song for another podcast, and I have all this stuff, but I was like kind of under a bit of a time crunch. And so I just plugged right into my interface, and I never do that. Like whenever
that's sloppy, that's risky.
I know. Like whenever I never do that. Like I like miking stuff up. I like doing it kind of the quote unquote old fashioned way. But you know what? It turned out really good. Like, and the client was happy with it, and I was able to do it a lot more efficiently and quicker because I needed a bunch of different tracks with a bunch of different styles, and I had to produce a fully completed drum, bass, guitar, everything song, and I got done with it, and I was like, wow, if somebody just showed me this and didn't tell me anything about it, I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the future. Every company now is coming out with cab simulators and amp simulators because there's fewer and fewer people playing out. There's fewer and fewer people that nobody needs a 100-watt amp anymore. But if you know how to use a 15-watt amp, it's more than you'll ever need. And if you know how to use the IRs, I bought a 2 Norts Torpedo, the live one, the rack mount one. So that I could keep using my Supro. I use a Supro Jupiter pretty much exclusively as my main amp. And it's 65 watts. It's loud.
Oh yeah.
And got married, had kids, and I can't use it anymore. So I bought this thing, and I record pretty much exclusively through the digital load box. And if you do it right out of the box, it does not sound correct. But if you're willing to play around with the IRs and you're willing to play around with the internal miking simulator and the EQ, it's very, very convincing.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think my ears are a little bit sharper than your average Joe's, just not because I have like a skill in it, but just because
job.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I pay such close attention to it. I know some people with super ears. I don't have that. I definitely don't. But I'm just kind of tuned in a little bit. And I just don't think things are just really good now. The digital emulations are just really, really good. I even remember the first time Keeley come on a couple of years ago, and we were discussing this. And he's like, yeah, but analog dirt is still where it's at. And I still agree with that. But man, they've gotten really good. They've gotten a lot better than they were in 2015. So,
oh yeah, 1,000% analog dirt is the way to go. The only good digital breakup that I've ever heard is through these new Class D amps. And I actually bought one of the little Boss. What's it called? The little Katana Mini. I bought it because it was like $89 on Reverb used, and I had to try it. And the distortion in that sounds fantastic, but it is not the same. Not all distortion is created equal.
No.
Definitely, and digital distortion has a long way to go. It doesn't feel real.
Yeah, and I think people who don't play would call us like crazy, but I really do think that. I do. I think that's one of the biggest downfalls with the Helix. Like I think you still like kind of need the analog dirt pedals to make that thing reach its full potential. And that's just my
You,
opinion.
you do, yeah. You definitely do. It just, I can't describe it any other way other than it just doesn't feel correct.
Yeah.
The clipping is weird because you have a digital ceiling as opposed to having no ceiling. With analog there is a much higher potential for maximum headroom than there is in digital. And it's because of bandwidth. There's
Right.
only so much processing you can do in a digital space. It's the exact same thing. The best comparison I can find is a digital univibe versus an analog univibe. There
Oh,
are
yeah.
there are digital limitations to making that super high peak and that super low trough that are the sought after univibes, and it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same type of signal as a distorted signal. It's just a much smoother roller coaster like curve.
That is a really good example, especially with that type of effect. And one of the things that is really interesting, and I don't know what this says. I'm not sure where I'm going with this line of thinking, but I don't know if you saw that at Neural DSP, they came out with their very high end like Helix competitor. Did you see that?
Yeah, I have seen that.
They just
There's
showed
all those new things that are coming out that have a bunch of really neat features that I would love to get my hands on, but I haven't tried one of those. Have you?
I have not tried one of those. I don't even think they're technically out yet. I think they just were out for pre-order. I could be wrong. They might have had them at NAMM. I'm not 100% sure. I honestly haven't paid that close of attention, but it's interesting. It's interesting to see a company like that's not as big as Line 6, to throw their hat in the ring and do heavy development in that kind of product, because it takes a lot of time and money to make something like that. But I was interested they showed the guts of it the other day, and if my memory is serving correctly, it's a dual Shark platform. I, for some reason, had it in my head that it would be something even crazier. I know Shark is a very powerful DSP processing chip, but it's been around.
Very industry standard, yeah.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. So I was actually surprised. I thought I kind of had it in my head that it was probably going to be something else, something I wasn't familiar with.
I see a lot of Shark stuff. I see a lot of ARM stuff. I still see a lot of FV1 stuff. And those are really your main DSP platforms. And I really think the reason is price. You can make some incredible stuff with these new microprocessors that are out there, but they're expensive. And you're going to put one in every single product you make. I mean, that's a lot of hardware to commit to. You get into also, if you're going to have these manufactured, you get to some of these, 100 plus pin placement pieces. You need a machine to do that. It'd be too hard for you or I to do it, with our hands.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I think that's probably the way to go with most SMT stuff. Not that it can't be done by hand, but it just isn't.
Oh, no, it can. It was how motivated are you to try?
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm still blown away that Dr. Scientists, I don't know if you've ever taken a peek inside the atmosphere. That's all SMT, and they do it all by hand. Those crazy
They
Canadians.
do it all by hand.
I'm like,
another crazy Canadian is Steve Demadash is still doing all his stuff by hands, and he's got some very high component count stuff. There's the argument against SMT versus the through hole stuff, and from a scientific perspective, if you want the shortest, the least amount of signal loss, SMT is the way to do it. I don't care what you say or how much mojo is in those giant capacitors that you have in your old fuzz face or whatever. But the shorter you make that line from your guitar cable to your amp, the higher the fidelity of your signal. And when you are mounting things directly to the board, it cuts out several inches, which is not like it matters. If you have like 30 or 40 feet, maybe it makes a difference. But when you're talking about cutting, 5 or 6 inches of signal out of the entirety of the whole circuit, it's not really that much.
Well, then to top it off, just the amount of components that are available in through-hole is dwindling every year. It's just not. It's at some point, and it's not going to be for a very long time. But at some point, it's just not going to be feasible. It's just not.
If you're getting into modding today, good luck. Because if you open up the back of any Boss pedal post 2016, 2017, they're all completely SMT. Some have multiple boards. There's a lot more learning to do than there used to be.
It's just the way things are. I mean, electronics manufacturing has progressed, and we can say that they're not as good if you want, but I don't think in most cases that's necessarily true. I really don't.
People need to remember, just need to remember that technology doesn't get worse every year.
Right?
It's getting better.
That is a very good way to put it. I just noticed what time it is, and we better get into some of these classic questions and wrap this thing up.
Well, let's knock some out.
So before we get into that, how about you can put up a billboard and say whatever you want?
Sure. Coming out with some new stuff this year. Keep an eye on us on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. We are coming up on 5,000 followers on Instagram. So, definitely keep an eye out because we're going to do something special when that happens. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram. Check out our websites. Subscribe to our newsletter because there's going to be some special stuff coming out there pretty soon.
All right. That works. Where can they find you on the internet other than Instagram?
Sure.
TonetugaEffects.com is our website. You can also find us on Reverb. Just search for the company name, Tonetuga Effects. YouTube. I don't have my own YouTube channel. I leave that to the professionals. Again, just search for the name and you'll find our stuff.
All right. There you go. Perfect. All right. Here we go. So first of the last two questions, what is your favorite Boss pedal?
Ooh. Can I pick the GE7? The EQ pedal?
I think you can.
Best, most useful pedal, even more than the tuner. The EQ pedal.
All right. I think that's the first time anyone's picked the EQ pedal.
It's a classic.
I get the tuner quite a bit. Usually when I get the tuner, the person's like, that's boring though, so let me think of something else. But a lot of people go with the tuner.
The pedal I've owned the longest, the one of the first two pedals I bought was the Boss Chromatic Tuner, and that's the only pedal that I still have. So that's very old.
Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. All right, and for the classic question, what kind of pizza do you like?
Oh man. I'm kind of a simple guy. I like pepperoni.
You can't go wrong with pepperoni.
Keep it classic. I like flatbread though, or like thin crust. Sorry.
Okay, gotcha. I'm with you on that. That's probably like when I have a pizza craving. That's most likely what I'm wanting is a thin crust pepperoni pizza. Maybe like a cheese, but who knows?
You can eat 1,000 small Reese's cups, but you can only eat a few of the full size ones.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
So I think the thin crust pizza is kind of like mini version of pizza.
And it's
so
just
I can pack more in my body.
And the texture's just right. You know what I mean? Like it just works.
Agreed.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on. And I think we're going to jump over to Patreon here for a little bit. So
yeah, sure thing. Definitely enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me on, and hit me up in the future.
All right, will do. All right, everybody. For Michael, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones.
Chimpanzee's got it figured out.
All right, that was wonderful. I quite enjoyed talking with that man. He is a delight of a person. Go check out all of his pedals and stuff. It's really good. That Clockwork Overdriver, I'm not lying. The thing sounds super good. I really like it a lot. It's a good pedal. So yes, let's see. Do we have anything else to wrap this episode up with? Oh well, as always, share it with a friend. Share with anybody that you run into that might be a guitar player, might be a guitar nerd, and enjoy this kind of content. This is the way to do it. This is the way to spread the love. It's the way we grow the show, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So yes, if you could please share this with somebody, that would mean the world to me. In fact, it means the world to me that you are still hearing this right now, because there's a lot of other things you could be listening to. And with that in mind, why don't you get to listening to them? There's a lot of songs out there. There's a lot of podcasts out there. Go check them out. Later. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.